Welcome back to Namely 90s Minute. Every week we look back at a culturally relevant show, movie, or piece of pop culture that probably helps stoke the algorithm. This week, in honor of the Five Nights at Freddy's movie coming out, we're looking back at a progenitor of the found footage horror genre, the Blair Witch Project. The Blair Witch Project is a 1999 supernatural horror film starring three relative unknowns. One who played Mary Crawford in the 2002 Taken miniseries, not that Taken, a guy who played a man whose ex-wife killed their son in an episode of Law & Order, and Alison Pill's husband. The story is presented as found footage that three missing independent filmmakers left behind while shooting a documentary about the mythical Blair Witch. They travel to a small town in Maryland and interview the townsfolk about the myth. They learn about a hermit who used to live in the nearby woods and would abduct kids in pairs and kill them while forcing one to stand and stare in the corner of the room. In the woods, they encounter some fishermen who claim the woods are cursed and tells the tale of a young girl in the 1880s who went missing in the woods and returned 3 days later to tell the tale of an old lady whose feet never touched the ground. Finally, the group hike out to Coffin Rock, where some dudes were found ritualistically slaughtered in the 19th century. The next day, they find a graveyard with 7 clarns, which are stacked stones, and Josh accidentally knocks one over. That night, while camping, they hear sticks snapping outside their tent, and in the morning try to hike back to their car but can't find it, so they camp for another night, hearing the snapping sounds again. The next morning, they find 3 clarns around their campsite. Heather notices their map is missing, and Mike admits to have thrown it into the river out of frustration, which causes an argument between the three of them. They head south using a compass and come across a bunch of stick figures hung in the trees. That night, they hear more noises around the camp and children laughing. And then something shakes the tent, which causes them to freak out and hide in the woods until morning. When they return to camp, they find their stuff had been rifled through and Josh's stuff covered in slime. They eventually realize that they've been walking around in circles, and then Josh disappears the next morning. The following evening, they hear Josh's cries of agony in the woods, but don't go out to look for him because they're afraid it's the Blair Witch trying to lure them from the camp. The next day, Heather finds a talisman made with Josh's shirt, hair, and teeth, but decides not to tell Mike about it. She does the classic "I'm so scared" monologue and apologizes to all their families. That night, they hear Josh calling out to them, so they follow his voice to the abandoned hermit's house, which is littered with demonic symbols and children's bloody handprints. In the basement, Mike is assaulted by an unseen force and Heather yells. Her camera shows Mike in the corner, unresponsive, facing a wall, and then she is assaulted and drops her camera. And that's the Blair Witch Project in a Namely 90s Minute. More or less. Join us again next Tuesday for another Namely 90s Minute. Remember, you can always hear these a day early and full episodes of Namely 90s on all major podcasting platforms. And most and small ones too. Please subscribe and do all the other YouTube things. Bell ringing, share, like, subscribes, that sort of stuff. And we'll catch you next time.